Most men believe attraction begins when they make a move, when they speak, flirt, or touch, but you've probably seen something different. A man walks into a room, says very little, does almost nothing, and yet something shifts. Attention moves toward him. Interest appears before interaction even begins. It feels subtle, almost invisible, but powerful. That's because desire often starts long before physical contact. It begins with emotional signals most people never notice. In this video, you'll learn why some men awaken attraction instantly without touching her, and why trying harder often prevents it from happening at all. The attraction paradox most men never notice. There's a quiet paradox in attraction that most men overlook. The men who try hardest to create desire often generate the least of it, and the men who appear to do very little sometimes spark interest almost instantly. From the outside, this looks confusing. It feels unfair, even random, but it isn't random at all. Most men approach attraction as something they must produce through humor, charm, compliments, or constant engagement. They believe desire is the result of visible effort. If they say enough, do enough, or show enough interest, attraction will eventually appear. Sometimes that works. Most of the time it creates something else instead. Comfort, friendliness, or polite engagement without emotional charge. The difference between comfort and desire is subtle but powerful. Comfort comes from predictability. Desire comes from emotional tension combined with safety. When a man tries too hard to keep everything smooth, easy, and clearly positive, he removes the emotional contrast that creates intrigue. Conversations feel pleasant, but nothing feels alive. There's no sense of discovery, no internal curiosity pulling her closer. Now compare that to the man who awakens desire without touching her. He isn't performing constantly. He isn't trying to fill every silence. He isn't adjusting himself moment by moment to maintain approval. Because of that, something unusual happens. Space appears, and inside that space attention grows. When interaction is not overloaded with effort, the mind naturally begins to explore. She becomes more aware of his presence, more aware of subtle shifts in tone, expression, and timing. Instead of being guided through a performance, she is experiencing a dynamic that feels less predictable, and therefore more engaging. This doesn't mean being distant or uninterested. It means not needing to manage every second of the interaction. Men who awaken desire quickly often share one quiet trait. They are comfortable letting moments breathe. They don't rush to impress. They don't hurry to define the interaction. They don't chase reactions. That relaxed pacing communicates something powerful beneath the surface: emotional self-sufficiency. It signals that the interaction is something they are enjoying, not something they are depending on. And dependence is one of the fastest ways to reduce attraction. When a man's energy subtly asks, "Is this going well?" her nervous system feels the pressure of answering that question. Even if nothing is said, the emotional responsibility shifts toward her, and the dynamic becomes heavier. But when a man remains grounded regardless of outcome, the interaction feels lighter. There is nothing she needs to manage, nothing she needs to reassure. She is free to simply experience the moment. That freedom is where desire often begins. Another part of the paradox is this: desire grows stronger when it feels self-generated, when attraction seems to arise from her own internal response rather than from obvious persuasion. It feels more real and more compelling. The less it feels like someone is trying to create the reaction, the more natural the reaction feels. This is why some men appear magnetic without obvious effort. They are not forcing emotional movement, they are allowing it. They create a stable emotional center while leaving enough unpredictability for curiosity to exist. Safety is present, but so is space. Engagement is present, but so is calm restraint. That balance is rare, and rarity naturally attracts attention. Most men never notice this paradox because they focus on visible behavior: what to say, what to do, how to escalate. They assume attraction begins at the moment of action. In reality, attraction often begins before any move is made. It begins when her perception of the man shifts from someone interacting with me to someone whose presence I am becoming aware of. That awareness is quiet at first, almost imperceptible, but once it starts, the emotional tone of the interaction changes. The man who awakens desire without touching her isn't doing something magical. He is simply not interfering with the psychological conditions that allow attraction to form. And once those conditions are present, desire often appears faster and with far less effort than most people expect. the emotional signal that awakens desire first. Before attraction becomes visible, it becomes felt, not as a clear thought, not as a conscious decision, but as a subtle shift inside the nervous system. Most men assume desire begins when a woman decides she likes someone. In reality, her body often responds before her mind forms any conclusion. She may not even know yet whether she's interested, but something has already changed in how she experiences his presence. That early shift is triggered by a specific emotional signal, grounded intensity. Grounded intensity is calm on the surface, but alert underneath. It's the feeling of someone who is relaxed yet fully present, not distracted, not restless, not trying to control the interaction, simply aware and steady. This emotional state communicates two messages at the same time. There is no pressure here, and something here matters. When both of those signals exist together, the nervous system becomes attentive. Attention sharpens because the environment feels safe enough to relax, yet interesting enough to stay engaged. That combination creates the first spark of desire, long before physical closeness ever happens. Many men unknowingly send the opposite signal. They either appear calm but emotionally flat, comfortable, friendly, predictable, which creates ease without attraction, or they appear energetic and expressive but internally tense, which creates stimulation mixed with pressure. Neither combination produces the same effect as grounded intensity. A man who is calm but emotionally unavailable feels distant. A man who is expressive but anxious feels unstable. Desire tends to emerge around the man who is emotionally steady while still fully engaged. You can often recognize this difference in pacing. His movements are not rushed. His reactions are not exaggerated. He doesn't respond to every moment as if it requires immediate action. There is a natural rhythm to how he speaks, pauses, listens, and responds. That rhythm signals internal control. Control in this sense doesn't mean dominance. It means emotional regulation. When someone is regulated, others feel it. The conversation feels easier, the silence feels less tense, and attention naturally gravitates toward the person holding that stability. Without saying anything directly, he becomes the emotional anchor of the interaction. This is one of the earliest ways desire awakens without touch. A woman may not think, "I'm attracted to him." Instead, she feels something simpler. "I feel different around him." That difference often shows up as heightened awareness. She notices when he enters the space. She becomes more conscious of the pauses in conversation. Small interactions feel slightly more charged, even though nothing obvious has happened. Because the signal is emotional rather than physical, it works quietly. There is no clear moment when attraction begins. It grows gradually, like tension forming in the background of an interaction. Another reason grounded intensity is powerful is that it removes the sense of urgency many interactions carry. When a man appears rushed to impress, rushed to escalate, or rushed to secure interest, the interaction feels time-sensitive. Urgency pushes the nervous system toward caution, but when the pace feels unforced, the experience feels open-ended. There is room for curiosity, room for imagination, and room for attraction to develop naturally rather than being pushed forward. This is why some men appear to create instant interest even when they do very little. Their presence changes the emotional environment. They are attentive without hovering, relaxed without being disengaged, interested without chasing. These subtle emotional cues are often felt before they are consciously understood. A woman may not immediately know why she finds herself paying closer attention, why she feels slightly more alert, or why the interaction seems more memorable than others. She only notices that something about the moment feels different. That difference is the emotional signal awakening desire, quietly, invisibly, and often long before any physical move is made. The silent behaviors women feel before they see. Much of attraction is communicated before it is consciously noticed, not through obvious flirting, not through dramatic gestures, but through small behaviors that quietly signal emotional stability and internal confidence. These behaviors are easy to miss because they look ordinary. In fact, many men overlook them precisely because they don't appear impressive on the surface. Yet these are often the signals that create the strongest emotional impact. One of the most powerful silent behaviors is controlled pacing. Men who rush their movements, speech, or reactions often communicate subtle urgency. Even when the words sound confident, the pace suggests tension, as if something needs to happen quickly. That sense of urgency shifts the emotional tone of the interaction, making it feel slightly pressured. In contrast, a man who moves at a natural, unhurried pace creates a different emotional experience. His pauses feel intentional rather than uncertain. His responses feel chosen rather than reactive. Without saying anything directly, he communicates that he is comfortable with the moment exactly as it is. That comfort is felt. Another silent behavior is emotional containment, the ability to feel engaged without visibly chasing reactions. Many men unknowingly track every response a woman gives: her smile, her tone, how quickly she replies. Their expressions subtly change based on what they receive, creating a dynamic where their emotional state appears dependent on the interaction's outcome. When a man remains emotionally contained, the interaction feels more balanced. He can laugh without overextending, listen without leaning forward for approval, and remain relaxed whether the conversation speeds up or slows down. This emotional steadiness signals independence, which naturally increases intrigue. There is also the quiet power of stillness. Stillness is often misunderstood as passivity, but in attraction it functions differently. When someone is comfortable remaining still, not constantly adjusting posture, not fidgeting, not trying to create movement, their presence becomes more noticeable. Attention gravitates toward the person who appears most internally settled. This is why some men seem magnetic even when they speak less. They are not disappearing into the background. They are creating a stable point that others instinctively orient toward. Eye contact plays a similar role when it is unforced. Quick, nervous glances signal uncertainty, while overly intense staring feels aggressive. But calm, natural eye contact, held without effort and released without tension, communicates ease. It suggests that the interaction is not being managed moment by moment, which allows the emotional atmosphere to remain open rather than pressured. Even small details like posture communicate silent messages. A grounded posture, relaxed shoulders, and balanced breathing signal comfort with oneself. These cues are often processed subconsciously by others, creating a sense of calm familiarity mixed with subtle intrigue. Women often feel these signals before they consciously notice them. They may not think he is emotionally steady, but they experience the effect. Conversations feel smoother, pauses feel less awkward, and attention lingers longer than expected. Because these behaviors operate beneath awareness, they can awaken desire without any obvious attempt at attraction. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. No flirtation needs to be exaggerated. The emotional environment itself begins to feel different. This is why silent behaviors often have more impact than visible techniques. Techniques can be copied, emotional steadiness is experienced, and when these subtle cues align, calm pacing, emotional containment, natural eye contact, grounded posture, they create a presence that feels both safe and intriguing at the same time. That combination is often enough to awaken interest long before a man ever makes physical contact. Why desire appears suddenly around certain men. To someone watching from the outside, attraction can look sudden. A woman meets a man, speaks with him briefly, and within minutes something changes. Her attention sharpens, her energy shifts, the interaction begins to feel more charged, even though nothing dramatic has happened. It seems instant, but what's actually happening is a rapid alignment of emotional conditions that allow desire to emerge. One of the most important of these conditions is polarity. Polarity is not about dominance or control, it's about emotional contrast. When two people bring different but complementary energies into the same interaction, attention naturally intensifies. If both people operate at the same emotional level, equally cautious, equally uncertain, equally reactive, the interaction remains neutral. But when one person introduces calm stability, while the other brings curiosity and responsiveness, a subtle tension forms. That tension is not uncomfortable, it's engaging. It creates movement inside the interaction without needing obvious effort. Certain men create this effect naturally because they do not rush to match every emotional shift that occurs around them. When the conversation becomes lively, they remain steady. When it becomes quiet, they do not panic and fill the silence. Their emotional center stays consistent, which creates contrast against the changing emotional environment. This contrast draws attention. Another factor that makes desire appear suddenly is predictability mixed with unpredictability. Complete unpredictability feels unsafe, while total predictability feels dull. Attraction tends to grow in the space where both exist at the same time. A man who is emotionally stable but not entirely predictable creates that balance. His tone may remain calm, but his responses are not scripted. His reactions feel natural rather than calculated. Because she cannot fully anticipate each moment, curiosity stays active. At the same time, because his overall presence remains steady, the unpredictability feels exciting rather than unsettling. This combination often causes attraction to feel like it appeared instantly. In reality, her nervous system has quickly determined that the interaction feels both safe and engaging, a rare pairing that immediately captures attention. Desire also seems to appear faster around men who are not urgently seeking validation. When someone is subtly asking, "Am I doing well?" the emotional dynamic becomes focused on reassurance. But when a man appears content with the interaction regardless of immediate outcome, the focus shifts. Instead of managing his emotional state, she becomes free to explore her own responses. That freedom allows attraction to surface more quickly. There is also the role of emotional self-direction. Men who awaken desire quickly tend to carry an internal sense of direction. They are present in the conversation, but their identity does not depend on how the interaction unfolds. This creates the impression that they are bringing their own energy into the moment rather than borrowing it from the reactions around them. That sense of independence is compelling because it suggests depth. It signals that there is more to discover beneath the surface, and curiosity naturally follows. From the outside, these dynamics are easy to miss. It may look like the man simply has something others don't, but what is actually happening is more precise. His emotional signals create an environment where desire can emerge rapidly and without pressure. When safety, emotional contrast, curiosity, and independence appear together, attraction does not need time to build slowly. It can surface almost immediately, not because something dramatic occurred, but because the psychological conditions aligned all at once. That is why certain men seem to awaken desire without touching her. Their presence creates the shift long before any physical move is ever made. Why most men accidentally block this effect. If awakening desire without touch is possible, the natural question becomes, why doesn't it happen more often? In most cases, the issue isn't lack of attractiveness, intelligence, or personality. It's the small, unconscious habits that quietly interfere with the emotional conditions that allow desire to form. One of the most common is over-explaining. Many men feel the need to clarify their intentions, prove their interest, or make sure the interaction is clearly moving in a positive direction. While this seems thoughtful, it often removes the natural tension that makes attraction engaging. When everything is explained too quickly, curiosity has no space to grow. Another common habit is constant validation seeking. This doesn't always appear as direct questions. It can show up through tone, pacing, or repeated attempts to gain approval, telling extra jokes to make sure she laughs, adding unnecessary compliments to maintain momentum, or adjusting behavior moment by moment based on her reactions. These subtle signals communicate uncertainty, even when confidence is being expressed verbally. Uncertainty itself isn't the problem, the need for reassurance is. When a man appears dependent on feedback to stay comfortable, the emotional balance of the interaction shifts. Instead of exploring her own responses, she begins sensing that she is also managing his experience, and the natural environment for desire becomes heavier. Another way men unintentionally block attraction is through over-availability, responding instantly to every message, rearranging plans immediately, or making their schedule constantly open can seem generous. But when availability appears unlimited, it removes the sense of independence that makes someone feel intriguing. Attraction grows more easily when both people feel that the interaction is chosen rather than needed. There is also the issue of rushing the process. When a man tries to escalate conversation, emotional closeness, or physical interaction too quickly, the nervous system often reads urgency as instability. Even if the intention is positive, the pace creates subtle pressure. Desire tends to grow when there is enough time for anticipation, not when each moment feels pushed forward. Emotional reactivity can also quietly shut the effect down. If mood changes visibly based on how the interaction unfolds, becoming more animated when attention is high and more withdrawn when it slows, the interaction begins to feel outcome dependent. Consistency is replaced with fluctuation, and the emotional contrast that created intrigue begins to flatten. Perhaps the most overlooked factor is trying too hard to appear impressive. When a man continuously attempts to entertain, persuade, or demonstrate value, the interaction starts to feel like a performance. Performances can be enjoyable, but they rarely create deep attraction because they signal effort rather than authenticity. The more someone tries to prove their worth in the moment, the less natural their presence feels. Men who awaken desire quickly often do the opposite. They allow the interaction to remain simple. They do not overload it with effort. Because of that, the emotional environment stays light, open, and slightly unpredictable, exactly the conditions that allow curiosity and attraction to develop on their own. Blocking attraction is rarely the result of one obvious mistake. It usually happens through small accumulations of pressure, talking a little too much, moving a little too fast, needing a little too much confirmation. None of these actions seem dramatic individually, but together they change the emotional tone of the interaction. Once the tone becomes pressured instead of open, the quiet effect that awakens desire without touch begins to fade. Understanding this is important because it reveals something many people miss. Attraction often disappears, not because something went wrong, but because the natural conditions that supported it were gradually replaced by effort and urgency. And when effort becomes the focus, presence quietly disappears, taking the invisible spark with it. The presence that creates desire without touch. When you look closely at men who seem to awaken desire without physical contact, the pattern is surprisingly simple. They are not trying to generate attraction in every moment. They are holding a presence that allows attraction to develop naturally. This presence is built from three quiet qualities: emotional steadiness, independence, and attentive awareness. Emotional steadiness means their internal state does not swing dramatically based on how the interaction unfolds. Whether the conversation becomes lively or quiet, whether attention increases or decreases, they remain centered. This consistency creates a sense of reliability that the nervous system recognizes as safety. Independence adds another layer. Their enjoyment of the interaction is genuine, but it is not dependent on immediate validation. They are participating because they want to, not because they need the interaction to succeed in a particular way. That independence creates space, and space allows curiosity to grow. Attentive awareness completes the dynamic. They are present, listening, and responsive, but not overreactive. Their attention feels focused rather than scattered, which makes each moment feel more intentional. Without forcing anything, they communicate that the interaction matters, yet nothing is being rushed. When these qualities combine, the emotional environment changes. The interaction feels calm, yet subtly charged. Nothing dramatic is happening, yet attention deepens. Interest grows without visible effort. This is the state where desire often awakens on its own. A woman may not consciously identify what is different, but she feels it: the absence of pressure, the presence of steady engagement, and the sense that the moment is unfolding naturally rather than being pushed forward. Because nothing feels forced, her responses become freer and more spontaneous. Desire that forms in this environment tends to feel more genuine because it is experienced internally rather than externally persuaded. It is not the result of being convinced or impressed, it is the result of feeling something shift inside the interaction itself. This is why touch is not always the beginning of attraction. Often it is simply the moment when attraction that already exists becomes visible. The men who seem to awaken desire instantly are not using hidden techniques. They are maintaining a grounded presence that quietly communicates confidence, emotional security, and independence. Those signals allow the nervous system to relax while remaining attentive, the exact combination that invites desire to appear. When nothing is forced, nothing needs to be chased. Attraction has room to move on its own timeline. And when it begins this way, it often feels effortless, not because nothing happened, but because the most important part happened beneath the quiet surface of presence. Conclusion: desire doesn't always begin with action. Often it begins with presence, the quiet signals of steadiness, independence, and calm attention that are felt long before any touch happens. When a man stops trying to force attraction and instead creates an environment where curiosity and emotional comfort can exist together, desire often awakens naturally. The shift is subtle but powerful: less performance, more presence. If this perspective changed how you see attraction, subscribe for deeper psychology-based insights each week, and watch the next video on your screen now. It reveals the subtle emotional tests that quietly decide whether attraction grows or disappears.